This is Secrets to Win Big, your roadmap to sustained growth. Brought to you by Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. Find him at zenmango.com. And now, here's your host, Arjun Sen.
Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. Today, my VIP guest is Brian Stevens. Brian Stevens is a tech veteran. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Neural Magic. In this role, he aims to democratize the generative AI for enterprises and make it open and accessible to all. The little I learned about Neural Magic, it got me very intrigued about where the brand is going and the impact it will make in our day-to-day lives every day. Previously, Brian was the CTO of Google Cloud, and before that was the CTO of Red Hat. Brian, welcome to Secrets to Win Big.
Thank you, Arjun.
So Brian, first of all, congratulations to an amazing career. And of course, the best is still ahead with amazing impact coming. I want to go straight to the leader, who is one-on-one in his field. What made you choose this field? What made you feel that your unique skills put you in this particular area?
I think, oddly enough, a lot of people today grow up around tech from early days, and they're tinkering and a hobbyist. I actually didn't have access. And so as I was graduating from high school, all I wanted to do was build. And so to me, that meant being a carpenter. And luckily I had a wise sage guidance counselor that introduced me to computer science, which I didn't know was a career back then. And what he said to me, he said, you've done some programming. You've actually helped mentor the other kids. He said, so if you want to go build software and make carpentry your hobby. And he was really right, because, many decades later, the thought that I'm still programming and using software, I never would have imagined. And it's probably a toss-up of what I like more today, even carpentry or software.
Wow. But I want to go to what your mentor told you about go build. How did that cool piece of advice help you evolve over the years?
I think at first, I thought of software as a career and a occupation, but it was too early for me to realize that it really put you in an agent of change. And so I found myself in my first job out of college at a really large tech company. And back then, and this is all pre-open source software and pre-collaborative development, pre-cloud, but I had access to like these really smart engineers in source code. But what I found was unusual about me was I was surrounded by lots of engineers that sat in their cubicles and worked on their body of code and their objectives. Mm-hmm. And what was different about me was I wanted to know that what I was working on, I wanted to know the impact it could make. And I really struggled just to work on code without really understanding, does it really matter? And so I found myself more on trying to align towards how you make an impact. And then code is just the mechanism to make an impact. And so for me, it was being at a really large company, that was being incumbent in enterprise computing back then, is our group, is the journey and the things we're working on really going to matter at the company level? Is it really going to matter for our customers? And that stayed with me my whole career. Was it's not about, to me, the inward focusing on like, is my code, is my software, is my tech better than somebody else's? It's really, it's always been to me is like, can you change, you know, in this case, I've always been selling to customers. Can you change the, the impact to customers in some transformative way? And if you can't, then what's the point?
As you're saying this, the thing that hits me is I see three levels of amazing, high functioning individuals. Level one, if you look at in three axes, level one is an X axis. They are awesome in what they do. Level two, Y axis, is those subset of them who have fun doing it. But you are level three. Level three is the third axis, the Z axis, people who see an impact they're making on the lives of others. Okay? And I just think that not all of us get to that level. A lot of us just are happy with what I'm good at, having fun. But I think that's the impact the moment you said really hit home. I want to push you on something you shared is you have an amazing group of team of individuals, very high functioning. How do you get a team and help them unleash the best they have never seen themselves to do and connect them to this bigger vision of impact that rest of us may not see without Brian Stevens?
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? And it's often hard to do that when you're motivated, when you're self-motivated
Mhm.
and you see the vision and you see the impact and the destination you're trying to arrive. It's easy, and I'd say like many of my failings was to assume everybody sees that and everybody gets that, and it catalyzes the best of everyone, right, to apply towards that goal. So I've found like you said, there's some people that kind of don't just care, but they're master craftsmen,
Mhm.
you know, in their field, and they're happy just to be heads down, right? And that I've learned that that's okay. And but I've also learned that there's a whole nother class of people that really want to know what the mission is and the whys of it. And so I think that's been incredibly difficult, over a career, to like connect people with the mission and get them motivated about the mission and get them inspired about the mission. And I think I've just kind of learned that, in the times. I mean, the Google was a classic example of this. You step into Google and you're daunted that you're at a company, such an amazing company of so many smart people. And when I joined, I kind of got surprised,
Mhm.
um, just because many of the smartest people in the industry, and in this case, it was, joining to define, they'd already been at cloud for a number of years. Um, but when I got there, I realized the market that they wanted to serve was just for tech companies building tech, building cloud for like new companies and startups.
Mhm.
And my view was always, because I've always had that empathetic side of me around like customers and what their problems are and pain points and how to make them better, was that no, we're heading in the wrong way. And what we really need to do is bring this amazing technology to legacy enterprises, not just because that's where the money is, but moreover because they need it, because it can make, it can operationally make them so much more efficient, these large enterprises. But I'll tell you, like the redefinition of Google Cloud to have the right technical capabilities was the easy part. The hard part is what you said, which was motivating people to take on this mission
Mhm.
of servicing a class of what I'll call like large legacy enterprises is not why people join Google. They join Google to work on AI and self-driving cars and, you know, um, fancy things. And so to try to motivate some amazing smart engineers to work on enterprise capability on cloud, I would say was probably the hardest thing, that I do to get them excited. And you get there by just repeatedly explaining and, the vision and why it matters and how important this thing is to, the clients that at that time we wanted to serve.
Yeah, I think the moment you talk about the concept of heads up and heads down, I really feel heads down is when we start doing things. But before we start doing things, it's very important to have your head up to see where we are going. And one of the things a mentor of mine always told me that for you to be a leader till you see the vision, which always changes, clearly, no faking, no BSing yourself, you cannot show others the path. So I want to go to a little bit on neural magic, and I want to set it up with a question which initially may come across a little abrupt or rude, but I'm not trying to be. So in a world without knowing anything, the world really doesn't need any other tech company. But once we get to know about a brand and its impact, that's the part where we get in by saying, what took you this long? So what is neural magic here to solve for that was not there before neural magic came into existence?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say that there's two parts to that, driven. And I would say the first part of our journey, we've been at this for over 5 years, was trying to solve for a world that hadn't arrived yet. So meaning the way I looked at it was, if AI is so incredibly important, then it needs to be available to all.
Mhm.
It needs to be where you need it, when you need it, on the terms and cost, right? It can't, and if it ends up being this really expensive thing that requires, in this case, unique data centers, that puts it out of reach, right, for solving for, being available to every company and every person around the world,
Mhm.
then it's not going to have the impact. And so our first part of our journey was really focusing on, yes, democratizing AI, but democratizing it because making it so it can wouldn't require special hardware. It could run on your phone. It could run on a cheap mobile phone. It could run on your laptop. It could run on your existing compute that you already have. So meaning it would be a great AI delivered by software.
Okay.
And that's where I think it'll end up, right? Because it is so important. But, in the life of the startup, you don't always have decades of duration until you have to pay the bills. And what we learned halfway through our journey was it was taking longer for the AI capability part of it to arrive.
Mhm.
And so our enabling that AI capability on commodity hardware wasn't, wasn't realizable. And so what happened for us was the transformation for us really. So the first part is like self-reflecting, right? Like you can keep pounding on the same thing, right? But you have to self-reflect, right? As a person, as a company. And what we saw all of a sudden was we were so, proud of what we had built, technically really sophisticated and complex, but for a world that didn't need it yet. And that's a really hard thing to swallow, that, you built this amazing thing, but maybe it wasn't the right thing now.
Mhm.
So for us, the transformation was November of 2022, when all of a sudden a company called OpenAI introduces large language models to the world. And what we realized was at that point in time was it went from AI being a departmental goal to AI being a CEO's goal.
Mhm.
So the priority of it, just because people saw the impact. And so with that, we knew we had the right team and intellect, but we were solving for the wrong problem. And so it was a really difficult decision on our part, which was to really not embrace commodity infrastructure, but to really embrace specialized infrastructure, in this case, GPUs, NVIDIA, et cetera, to really make that world where large language models, in this case, meet NVIDIA GPU hardware and make that an amazing experience for enterprises, because that's where enterprises were. So it was really a meet them where they are today and make their world so much simpler and so much more cost effective. But it was a little bit like the Google thing,
Mhm.
but less people. So, so instead of having to convince 10,000 people that were going this direction, at least it was only convincing 40 people. But it was still difficult because people were leaving the things they built behind,
Mhm.
right? And you get attached to software you build. So, and here we are a year and a half later, and now it's a whole new world, right? People are seeing, and now we're getting the best validation isn't a vision. The best validation is clients like acknowledging, that you're helpful to them. And so now that we're in that wave, it's great to reinforce to the engineers on why their efforts matter.
I think, as you are sharing, the big aha for me is you started with a clarity of vision, but at the same time, you and the leadership team was open to revalidating in a changing world. So instead of being stubborn,
Mhm.
and in case of startups run out of capital, you realized how to do a balance of taking your current equity and current team and learning. Nothing is ever lost. How to redirect to make an impact. And the thing that resonates a lot is at the end, the biggest validation is when somebody actually sees the impact. I think that's the validation.
Yeah.
And I think in the story on how you evolved the company through this journey is fascinating. I want to build on that and ask you more personally is, so in this journey, you faced a lot of obstacles. I don't want to go into specific details, they are proprietary. I just want to understand Brian, the leader. When Brian faces an obstacle, what's the first thing he feels? What makes him not give up? And how does he get through obstacles?
Um, well, I think about it differently, to be honest. I think many people get hung up on what I'd just say is internal obstacles. You sort of look at organizational or the politics of an organization. All organizations have politics. It's just part of how businesses are run. I think it's easy for people because those are so close to you to get caught up in that. And it's something that I never really cared about.
Mhm.
I didn't. And so for me, the obstacles that I always looked at was how does the company make an impact and how does the company win? And what are the obstacles to prevent that? And sometimes they might be cultural, like we just talked about, right? And a cultural transformation in an organization. But the biggest obstacles, to be honest, especially like in neural magic in a startup, is, you know, why should a 45 person company get to participate in the biggest opportunity in the world that's only the domain of the $1 trillion tech companies? Like, why do we have a right?
Mhm.
Why do we have the technology? How can we catalyze people to build something amazing that clients need? How do we even build a brand? How do people even know we exist? To me, that is the obstacle. And to me, it's not so much how do I get around the obstacle? It's the obstacles are what energize me. I think I would be bored to tears if there wasn't like this big challenge. It was
Mhm.
the personal life thing of signed up to do an Ironman the day I saw my first Ironman. Just the thought of like that as like a challenge. And I just think that's what that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is the fact like we haven't figured this thing out. It's not just like there's not a tailwind behind us. Like, you get those every now and then, but then you move on to the next, that just gets you to the next obstacle. So it's just use the obstacle as the energy, surround yourself with like great people, and then collaboratively iterate. Right. And what I've also realized is I'm a really impatient person because like when you see something, you get so excited to go knock it down. But none of these happen quickly.
Mhm.
So it takes, you know, days, weeks, months, years, the red one was years, to get through some of these obstacles. But you just gotta persevere. Yeah.
So how does somebody who is impatient, or we can flip that and call it urgency, take a long project, something like 8 elephants that take 18 months to have a baby.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you stay excited every day in that long journey? Because I'm just being very specific. If I worked for you, I need your energy for the next 18 months to build this. On the other side, I need your urgency too. How do you balance both?
Yeah. I think like I think I've heard that from you, especially now, is that I bring them. It's easy to look at maybe the other way and say, I'm glasses always half full. Always, always, in anything, in the most dire of circumstances. And I think as engineers and tech people, you often get surrounded by people that are looking for the negative sides, the ways you can fail. And I think I am helpful to those around me by being their energy and helping them realize it's the long game and celebrate the milestones along the way. So I think that's just something that comes natural to me. It's how I feel myself, and I find I'm okay at and getting better at. I think a person, it's a lifelong journey to be good. I'm not there yet, but I think like I realize that I'm helpful to get people excited and enthusiastic to put heads down. And I think the other part of that is I kind of always assume I'm missing something. Like it's impossible not to be missing something.
Mhm.
Like it's impossible, right? And so I'm not, so I soul search every day
Hmm.
on like as you're down that long journey, like what could we be doing differently? And I question everything. And I mean, a lot of I do this and I surround myself because you can't be doing that at an organization at large, because you got to be, you got to set a course. But I still do that. I do that mostly at nights at 3 a.m. But I think that's good because it just makes me think about things more fully.
Mhm. So, as you talked about glass half full, I think that's one of those things so many of us use. I've realized I really don't care whether the glass is half full, because to me, it puts a lot of pressure. To me, at the end, it's all about fuel. I drive the car even when it is one-fourth full,
Mhm.
one-eighth full. All I need to have is a refueling plan, because all I need is somewhere to go. And to me, my fuel is positive energy. Okay. And I don't need to be positive always. Anytime I'm low, I call my daughter, I call my mentor, like I just call them recharge, instant recharge, and I'm off. Like, so that has taken so much pressure out. So if people say you're full, I say, I'm okay. I can even be one-eighth full as you go through.
I like that.
So now we get little personal. It could be personal area, professional. So if I just stopped you and asked you to brag shamelessly about your biggest win, or one of the biggest win, let's make it easier, that comes to your mind, because more importantly, I want to understand why you think that was a big win and who all helped you make the win happen.
Wow. That's like my least favorite topic.
I'm
But
just
yeah,
making it easy for you by saying who all made it, so
I
that you
know.
can brag about
I
others.
know, but just sort of the win. I think like Look, when you come out of school and you're just, you're a software developer, you have all these things you look up to, all these great surrounded by, like, I've always been an enterprise infrastructure person, and like I love it and I'm proud of it and I really enjoy it. But these daunting, huge companies and enterprise, you know, and mostly like, when I joined Red Hat and they were already public, the stock was $2, they didn't have a business model, they were losing money, they had 200 people, and I wanted to rebuild the model and go after enterprise. And we formulated something that hadn't been done before, which is we created the industry's first software subscription back in 2001. Like, it hadn't been done. But all of that was saying my belief of, like, I've always been very empathetic towards our users, as we've talked about, was like, there's just no way this model of like throwing software at enterprises and then asking them to pay you and thank you. It's not the right model. Like, you want to give businesses continuity. You want to, like, when you give them new software, you want to make it seamless. You want to make their experience constantly better. You don't have to give them work to do to qualify. We found out it took organizations millions of dollars to test new software coming into their organization. And I wanted to like solve for that. I want to say, no, if we made you have to test it, then it's a bug on us. And that was the fundamental part of the industry's first software subscription. And it changed the whole economic model as well. And it turned out to be exactly what enterprise organizations wanted in 2001, 2002. But I was still daunted. I mean, we're 200 people. We had a nice brand with Red Hat, but I was surrounded by the biggest juggernaut companies. And I found that really intimidating, right? Like, how does a 200-person company go and change an industry when you've got Sun Microsystems and EMC and HPs and IBMs and Dells, and like, who are we? But you know what? We built a better model for enterprises, and we really attached ourselves to the value chain of how to make their lives better. And at the same time commoditize the infrastructure that they needed. But I never, even when we were doing that, I didn't think it was really possible, but that was our mission. And so it didn't happen overnight. Like, we got an instant validation that was the right model, but you don't change an industry overnight. But the minute we started replacing the incumbents at scale was just an unbelievable moment. And the minute, like, so I'd never seen that movie before. I didn't think it was possible. And today, like, the fact, like, the whole world, I mean, the biggest clouds run on the technology that we were developing at this little 200-person company back then. It's just amazing. And I would say so I think that's one of the things I feel great at, because I've always said this weird thing is, like, I could care less about title and compensation, but I always want to look back at and say, did what I spend my time on make a difference? And is it long lasting? And so I'd say the Red Hat definitely is something that I feel proudest about and a big accomplishment. And I'm probably proudest in that there's now over 20,000 people. That 200-person organization is now over 20,000 people, of people that love working for that brand. And that just makes me smile, right? And you asked the question of, like, who did it, right? And who just surround yourself? It was 200 of us. We all had different roles. I had already come from enterprise when I joined at Red Hat, so it was easy for me to see that. But, like, vision's easy, execution's the hard part. And it took 200 people to all change what they were doing on a daily basis to execute to this new vision.
I will disagree with you. Think for a second. Having a leader who does not know where we are going, and every 2 days, like, no, let's go to LA today. Come on, guys, tomorrow. No, Boston. Okay. So I think for you, it is easy because, and I'll push you on this, because think for a second, there's something you dropped here, which you're taking for granted. But I'm thinking that is such a gold nugget you dropped. Okay. You talked about if a client uses your software and they have to test it, it's failure on you. Okay. Like you really want to give the baton to the next relay race runner. So to me, that mindset of building the vision of a seamless trust, I really think is one of the big ahas, because a company from 200 wouldn't have grown that big over all these years. So I really think there's a lot of vision elements that you have put in place. And I feel that, yes, absolutely, implementation is never easy, but it gets easier if I have an amazing leader ahead of me who not only sees this, but those micro things, when people listen to it, they will get that it wasn't that you just showed up there by saying, guys, come on, like, Stephen Covey said this, like you three, no, you didn't repackage thing. It was Brian Stevens' original that made this successful. So I appreciate you sharing that. So now let's go to a fun part of the conversation. Let's humanize this whole thing. So at the end of this conversation, you open an email and you get an invite. You realize that 3 Brians are planning to have a union. The 3 Brians are an 18-year-old Brian, Brian today, and 100-year-old Brian. So question 1, where would the 3 of them meet?
We would definitely be in my happy place, our happy place, which is on a boat away from everybody in the middle of Lake Champlain, 100%.
Awesome. So Brian 18 walks in. What would be the first thing Brian 18 will say?
I think Brian of 18 would probably, and these are really uncomfortable things for me to say, but I think Brian of 18 would be daunted by what he had accomplished, to be honest, because that the journey that he set out on was just to make an impact, and was actually never saw himself, right, relative to all these people in the industry, right, that he still looked up to. Never aspired to be one of those people, just aspired to make a difference and make an impact. And the career titles and all the other stuff and the success was just a side effect of just that 18-year-old's lifelong journey to make an impact and have fun doing it, because work should be fun. And I think there would be a lot of, like, I see 18-year-old Brian in my son's eyes,
Yes.
So I guess that's what it would be.
So what would 100-year-old Brian say when he walks in? First thing, what does he say?
He would say, it was a life well lived. And he would say, it's amazing what you've done for yourself, but it's far more rewarding the opportunities you've created along the way for so many other people. And that's what makes that 100-year-old smile, is the impact on others, and not necessarily where they arrive to.
And what would Brian say? Brian today?
Brian today worries if he's spending his time in the right places, right? Because life goes by fast.
Yeah.
And there's all these things that I don't touch because I'm so technically focused on enterprise industry. And as much as I'm happy about so many things, I still question myself on, like, whether it was the best application of a limited time.
Absolutely. I think the last part is very important, because at the end of the day, Brian, you and I have the same wealth. We have same 24 hours, and we have total control on what we do. And that's one of the things I learned from one of the top sports personalities of all times. Your success is defined by what one thing you choose to do at any instant. And for that, you have to unchoose everything else.
Right.
Like right now, if my wife calls me, or my daughter says, hey, Dad, The moment she says, "Hey, Dad," from the tone, I really need to tell you, "Hey, Ryan, time out."
I love it.
That conversation now, like to me, I think that's the part about the 24 hours are very important. So,
I
Brian,
think that was the day. I think that's, thank you for that. And I think that's the day I resigned from Google, this amazing company, to be with my dad when he had Alzheimer's and to be able to move back to the East Coast and spend time. Like that was one of those moments that I just said, this is spending my time wisely.
And that's the part where what I've learned is a part of you must have a small regret about leaving Google. But to me, life is about avoiding the bigger regrets. Okay. The bigger regret would have been if you were at Google and you could have been obscenely large, maybe CEO, something there, but not being there for Dad would have hit you here. Rest
100%.
is here. So
I smile at that. And I always say I have zero regrets for that. And I take that to my soul, you know.
I think that's brilliant. So Brian, this was a fascinating conversation. And I never had a chance to talk to you before, and I really learned a lot. To finish, you were very kind to answer so many questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So I try to be for so many people what I didn't have myself. And that is like, we talked about like access to technology early, but the other thing, you always hear the word mentor. And I never had a mentor. So I feel like I spent a career of making things up. And so but what I did do was this. I just observed and I saw how people handle themselves in certain situational things. And I consider myself having a million mentors. I'm a mashup of a million on a eternal quest to always improve. Consider myself a mashup of all the qualities I've seen other people exhibit that I wanted to emulate, and then also all the qualities or lack of quality that I've seen people that I absolutely do not want to take on. And I think that's who I am. So I guess my question to you is, you've had so much interaction to so many leaders. If you had one piece of advice for me, that I'll call it the waning part of my career. I'm not young anymore.
It's not waning. So my advice to you is very simple. Be you. And that's the part where it's very important to listen to everybody, decide what you want to take, what you don't want to take. At the end of the day, you really have to be just one person, that's you. And that was my advice I gave my daughter was, those days going through a tough marriage, going through a divorce. And of course, it was not easy. I told my daughter that I really just want you to be happy. But more importantly, I want you to be one person. I don't want you to be, because of the divorce, be a different person in front of Dad, in front of Mom, because that's a lot of pressure. If I have to come in front of you, say, okay, Brian, Arjun 82. Okay, press Arjun 82. Life is one life to live. Like that's the part where your authenticity, and I would even build on that by saying, Brian, don't change. Continue being you is my advice to you. Is not having a mentor is a good thing. That means you're always taking inputs. Like on my golf game, I tried a few coaches. It doesn't work because they just put my hand here, everything, and I hit great with them there. The moment they're gone, I invent new mistakes. So I have realized that being you, accepting who you are, and my amazing daughter also tells me that we are all unique. In a world, there are three kinds of brands. Brands, which I call one of many, ignore worthy. One of few, notice, and still you ignore. Okay? One of one is search stops here. One of one is FOMO. Each one of us were born one of one. My daughter reminds me that both my eyebrows are not the same. Dad, you're not biologically symmetric. Okay, daughters will do that to you. But that's the part where I feel, both for ourselves and the brands we create, if we don't see ourselves, and that's what I believe in, you have to see yourself as one of one, be confident that I'm one of one, and then live and act like the one of one. Okay. The moment you try to be somebody else, it's a disaster. Like the world does not need a fake Brian, a fake Arjun. So that's my 2 cents to you, because you're living. So
I
truly
love that. Thank you for that, Arjun. I love that.
Absolutely. So Brian, truly appreciate. Thank you. And this was a fascinating conversation, and appreciate you taking the time and sharing with me.
Cheers. Thank you, Arjun.
You've been listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. To learn more, visit www.zenmango.com. Share this podcast with your friends and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.